Hey, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to our next session of OKSTATE Transfer Talks. Today, we have with us Cassandra Cotton. She is our engagement specialist for first generation programming. She's been with OSU now for about how long?
A year and a half, a little over.
So Cassandra is fairly new to higher education and working with students, and I'm super excited to have her on the show and to talk a little bit more about how she serves our first generation transfer students. Cassandra, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, what made you decide to get into higher education and why serving students specifically?
So I was actually a transfer student to OSU myself. I had moved to Oklahoma from San Diego after my husband had got out of the military. And we just decided that OSU would be a good fit for us. And so we made the journey. I finished my degree from OSU in 2022. So I'm a fairly new graduate from OSU as well. But I kind of wanted to get into OSU as a job after I graduated because it was a space that I was familiar with. I felt like I could really resonate with what the students were experiencing because I had just been a student. And I also thought it would be a good opportunity to kind of get some experience in the professional world and be able to give back to the community that I had just been a part of. So that's kind of how I wound up at OSU. And so I never started my career thinking, oh, I'm going to go into student affairs. But this is where I found myself, and my students have made the job totally worth being here. And they've shown me what it takes to be in college, and I'm here to help them through that. And that doesn't mean just first gen students. It really means anybody who walks through my door. So
thank you. So one of the interesting things about our transfer student population is that many of them are first generation. In fact, we have about 34% that are first generation transfer students. Being a first generation student comes with its own set of challenges. Add to that the challenges of being a transfer student and switching between institutions and everything that comes with that. How does your office help our first generation students, and what does that look like?
So the program that I run is called First to Go. Primarily it's targeted towards freshman students. But honestly, since we're focusing on transfers here, there's never a time that I'm going to look at a transfer and turn them away. Because ultimately, although they aren't freshmen, they're still new to our institution. And so they need some of that same guidance that we might expect a freshman first gen to come in with. One of the great things about the First to Go program is specifically that we like to hit on that community building piece. And we do that through peer mentorship. And so students who join First to Go are put into groups with other students of a similar academic interest. And they are also put into groups with a peer mentor that actually leads those groups. And so anybody who joins First to Go is going to get that mentorship piece. They're going to get that guidance that they're looking for when they step into the space, because those students have been through it before. But they're also going to build community with their other members based on that first gen identity and some of those identifiers that they might have in common. So one of the biggest things that they get is community, they get education, but they also just get support and they get a home. So if they ever have questions or they just need a space to exist in, they know that First to Go and campus life is a space that they can be in, and it's a good place for them.
So one of the challenges that I think we see among our first generation students is that term first generation. What does that actually mean?
So at OSU, we define first generation as any student whose parent or guardian did not complete their bachelor's degree before they turned 18. So a lot of times students think, well, my sibling got a degree, so I'm not first gen. Well, yes, you are, because you're in the same generation as your sibling. So students like that, students from international countries whose parents might have earned a degree internationally also tend to identify as first gen. And then obviously students whose parents might have gone back to school after they were already in school. Just because your parent is getting their degree now doesn't mean you're not first gen. So really it encompasses a lot more people than people know, and sometimes students don't even know they're first gen until they're already at our institution. And so it's our job to kind of inform them about what that means and what those supports can look like.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. So like you said earlier, you know, I was a first generation student. I was a transfer student. I've talked about this before on these OK State Transfer Talk sessions. And one of the things that was super challenging for me, and I think is super challenging for a lot of our students, is the simple fact that as a first generation student, sometimes you don't know what you don't know, and you don't have that same type of support structure as someone who does have family members, you know, who've gone to college, who've gotten a degree, and it makes it difficult to navigate all of the things that are going on. And you talked a little bit about the First to Grow program and the mentors, and that you don't turn away transfer students, but how would a transfer student who's decided, you know, I just need help and I want to get connected to this program, how would they do that?
Typically, so there's a couple of different ways that I get connected to new students that weren't initially reached in our initial outreaches. One of them is through like recommendations. So if I've got a leader that's talking about First to Go and somebody's like, hey, I think that would be for me, then typically they will send their recommendation my way and I'll reach out to the student. But also if the student feels comfortable doing that outreach themselves, all they have to do is drop by my office or shoot me an email, and I'm more than happy to give them the information about the program. But also, even if students come in to talk about being in First to Go and they decide, hey, maybe that's not for me, it doesn't matter to me, because the fact that you walked through the door and you've identified that I'm somebody that's willing to help you is all that I could really ask for. And so they don't have to be in the program. They don't have to do anything extra to get support. All they have to do is be willing to ask and be willing to have a conversation. And that's how a lot of my great relationships with my students have formed, is because they're like, I don't know what's going on. I don't even know what questions I need to ask, but can you help me? And that's how the relationship grows. I help them figure it out, and then they enjoy coming back and we see each other and we build a positive relationship that way. So anybody who comes through the door, anybody who is referred to me is going to get outreach of some form.
So a lot of our transfer students are also non-traditional students. They may be attending online, they may have families, be married, they may have full-time jobs outside of school. So those opportunities to be connected may not be as prevalent as with some of our students who live on campus and who are routinely engaged in the different activities that are happening on campus. How do you intentionally go about reaching our transfer students who fall into those other non-traditional categories? And what are some of the things that you do to accommodate them and to meet them where they're at?
We've had a couple of students in First to Go specifically this year that are either commuting or they're taking care of family members, or situations that kind of make it difficult for them to attend our small groups. And so one of the things that we do in the program is I encourage my leaders to offer one-on-ones for students who aren't able to make it to the general meeting, because that still allows them to develop that trusting relationship with a peer. It allows them to stay plugged in with the community whenever they can come to things. And it also gives them another avenue of support, to where their leader can be like, hey, Cassandra, I have this thing going on with this student. I'm not really sure what to do. Can you help? And that helps me facilitate that way. So really providing a lot of flexible options is what I think is important. But also as a non-traditional student myself, not trying to push students into categories. So I was a student that was married while I was in school. I had a home to take care of. I had dogs to take care of. And I'm also a little bit older than some of our student population is. And so engagement on campus did not look the same for me as engagement on campus might look for somebody who's 18 living in dorms. And so being willing to recognize the efforts that those students put forth, and the achievements and steps that they take to succeed, recognizing that that might not look the same as what a traditional 18-year-old's journey is, but still seeing the value in that and still helping them reach their goals even when it looks different. For somebody like me, I was not going to go and spend a ton of time in a club after class because I had to commute back to my town. Okay, well, that doesn't mean I'm not engaged with my community. What are some ways that I can sustainably be engaged? So it's really about tailoring the experience to them as well.
Fantastic. Thank you. I'm glad you said that, tailoring the experience, because that's really what we try to do with our transfer students. Because we have so many transfer students who have so many other life obligations and so many other lived experiences, that tailoring that experience is important to make them feel that sense of belonging with OSU and make them truly feel like they are part of the Cowboy family. So what would be, since you experienced it yourself, what would be one of the things that you would recommend to a new or even a returning transfer student to do to try to create those connections so that they can have that support structure?
I would say find one area that you can dedicate for not necessarily academics, but for yourself. Because I feel like when students come to college, whether they're 18 or they're 32, college can be a really good time to kind of discover things about yourself and figure out what's important to you. And when we start to like hone in on those things, and surround ourselves with people that kind of think similarly or share similar interests, we find our people. And when we find our people, we find our community. And so the literature kind of tells us, like, once we find community, we're more likely to do better on campus. We're more likely to have better mental health. We're more likely to attain better grades, and we feel like we belong here. And so, as scary as it might be, I would just encourage you to put yourself out there a teeny little bit. And that doesn't mean dedicating 10 hours a week to a club. Like I said, it can be whatever works for you, but find your community, find your people, and let that experience shape who you are and who you want to be.
A lot of times when our transfer students see announcements about scholarships and stuff, especially for things like first generation and for programs that have been traditionally geared towards our freshman students, they don't necessarily feel like they have the ability to take part in applying for scholarships or leadership opportunities. Do transfer students have that same opportunity to be a leader, be one of the connection coaches, or to apply for the first generation scholarships that your office offers?
Of course. We don't hire first to go leaders based on solely first generation status, or even like the length of time that they've been here. We look at them as a holistic person. And so just because you're not a first gen student doesn't mean that you won't make a good leader. And the same goes for all of the services that we offer. So yes, we might be tailoring some things or trying to get freshmen to come, but that doesn't mean it's not for you. So don't be afraid to take advantage of those opportunities, and don't be afraid to inhabit those spaces. Just because it's got a label on it that says, hey, freshman, okay, well, nobody's going to be upset if you show up and participate. Like, if anything, we love to see your face there. And things like the 1890 scholarship with National First Gen Day, or anything associated with that, that is just as much for you as it is for a freshman, as it is for a grad student, as it is for a PhD candidate. Like, you are first gen no matter what. And you deserve to be celebrated for that aspect of your identity and so much more. And so please participate, because you do belong here.
Thank you again. That's something that we hear a lot, is finding the community, finding your people, because that does help our students be retained and graduated in a timely manner. So we're coming up on the end of this interview. Is there anything else that you feel like you should talk about, or you wanted to talk about your programming that we haven't covered with the questions?
Well, there's one event that we are planning that's coming up, and it's called the First Showcase. This is an event that is primarily for First to Go and Rise students to participate in, but it's something that we might be looking to expand in the future. And so this is going to be an event where our first gen students have the opportunity to share their voice and their experience with the OSU community. And so if you are able to come and support, or if you are able to share your voice, we would love to have you. And I can definitely give Cheryl some more information about that later. But any opportunity that you can take to elevate your voice and show the OSU community how much value you bring to the community, it's important, and it does make a difference, because the more that we can get our students in front of the community, in front of donors, that support just goes up. And so let's get you out there, let's show them your value, and let's rake in some dollars for you so that we can help you. That's like the side piece of our job, but it's one thing that if students can get out there and we can show them your value, then they are willing to help us. And that's all we want to do. So
Thank you. All right, so that's actually a really good thing, and I'll make sure I get that out to all of our students here when Cass gets me that information, to make sure you have that and you're able to be involved. She talked a little bit about National First Gen Day, which does happen in November, so be on the lookout next November for National First Gen Day and the opening of the 1890 scholarship, because you are eligible for that. If students wanted to find you, where is your office located, and how do they get there?
I'm located in the student union, so pretty central. I'm located in 211, so the space that was primarily used for Greek cubicles and student orgs is now transitioning into a space for you guys. And so we're going to be getting furniture in, we're going to be getting more seating areas, but it's also where our offices are located. So if you come on to the back little nook corner, I'm in the corner, I'm in 211K, and feel free to stop by anytime you have questions, concerns, or if you just want to chat.
So 211, for those folks who don't know, is the campus life area. So when you're on the second floor of the student union, if you pass the big hole in the floor that's in the atrium, campus life 211 is right off of that. You'll see it, no problem. There's a big barn door that slides back and forth. That's an entry into 211. Or when you go into the campus life lounge, right across the way, there's a desk with some glass around it, and there's another entry point there. And if you walk in either of those entry points, you'll be sure to find Cass's office and be able to get in contact with her. So I always like to end these with a smile or with a joke or with something to just give everybody the warm and fuzzies. What do you have for us today?
What do I have for us? Oh my goodness, I didn't know this was part of it. Just like a good thing.
It can be a good thing. You can talk about your favorite place on campus. You can talk about a hobby that you have. And by the way, Cass is an amazing painter, just FYI. She paints a lot of really amazing things. If you see the book nook on the counter of the campus life, she painted that. So make sure you go take a look at that too.
Well, speaking of favorite places on campus and painting, I did a painting, and it's actually in my office, of the OSU formal gardens. So I know that this year was one of the first years that they did a colorful arrangement. And next year I've talked to the person who has a hand in creating that, and they said that they're bringing the color back next year, and they're going to also add some height and 3D dimensions. And so keep your eyes out for that. But also I got an amazing opportunity to create a print of my painting for a gift for somebody. And so that was a good fun thing for this week, to be recognized for my painting.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Cass. And that brings us to the end of our session of OK State Transfer Talks. And as always, transfer students and all the other students who might listen to this, we appreciate you. We look forward to having you in our spaces, and we look forward to amplifying your voice, because that's what it's all about, is amplifying the student voice and putting the students first. So don't forget to check in with us, check in with Cass, check in with Campus Life and 211. And as always, go Pokes.